Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge radio, television, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern time zone as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. Sometimes I still have difficulty with that from living in the Central time zone. You can find us on television a couple different ways. In Alabama, close to Huntsville, you can find us on channel 182, and that's on Charter Communications. And then we're worldwide on Abundance Television, soon to be celebrating 4 amazing years. So Abundant Television found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. And on the radio, you can find us on WZLA. They're the biggest country station right here in South Carolina. So proud to be with those platforms. All of Facebook, all the social media sites, we do that as well. You can also continue sending email. I treasure each and every one of those emails. Donna@donnasedge.com, Donna@donnasedge.com. I have Barry Holcomb with me right now. This is one minister that Phil and I really listen to you, Barry. And so, and I don't say that to a lot of ministers, but you're right there on the tops as far as we're concerned. But it's so good to have you with me on the show today.
Well, you're very kind. Most of the things I have to offer just come from years of learning lessons, sometimes the hard way, and staying in the scripture and just being a very simple preacher and taking chapter and verse and teaching the people what the Bible says. So
that's what
I've been doing
we
this
need.
for a long time, 35 years.
We need that absolutely in this daytime that we're in right now. So you have a few things you wanted to talk about today, so I'm just going to throw it at you and let you go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you know me. I mentioned in the green room talk that my tongue is loose on both ends, so I can talk you to death. I'm pastor of Calvary Baptist Church in Belmont, Mississippi, which is in northeastern Mississippi. We've been here in our 8th year here now. And we landed here in 2019 after a 7-year hiatus from full-time ministry in the church. So we were plugged in and stayed a part of that. But the reason for our exit from the ministry for that 7-year sort of wilderness journey was that I was forced to resign from the church I pastored in a First Baptist church in a county seat town in North Alabama. And it was just a tumultuous time of life. It was life-changing. And it's kind of given me direction for the latter years of my ministry. I've been pastoring for 35 years. I'm getting ready probably to retire from pastoring, but Kathi and I, my wife Kathi, and the screen says Barry and Kathi, my better half is teaching today at the school, so I'm going along. But we're going to shift gears at some point. We have an online presence right now where some of Kathi's writing goes. Called Home to Heart Ministry. It's homeheartministry.com. And in the future, we're going to shift gears and operate under a ministry titled Remember the Way, which comes from Deuteronomy 8:2-3. So when I was terminated, we didn't really have a lot of guidance and didn't have a lot of, knowledge about support systems for pastors who have been terminated. And I promise you, the wounds are deep for pastors who've been through that. And really, I think it's damaging to the church because some churches are just in a habitual cycle of terminating pastors, calling one, going through a honeymoon season and finding things that they dislike, and maybe then a small group of people sees to it that he is forced under pressure to resign or even outright terminated. I use those terms sort of interchangeably. And so I am, at long last, I've been working on a degree for 6 years, and a part of the length of that was due to my health. I had some problems with my hip, had some real bad orthopedic surgeries and just a lot of pain and, trying to recover from that. But I'm at the finish line finally, Donna. So I'm completing a doctorate of ministry degree at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. I graduate next month, May 15th. I finished, since our last conversation, I completed my exit interview. Sort of a defense, if you want to put it that way, a defense of a dissertation The dissertation in this program is called A Project in Ministry. And my project was to write a workbook for wounded pastors. And I really think I've put together a unique product because there are a lot of things out there that I've seen. And just for instance, let me give you a taste of what some of the literature is out there and then kind of talk about the workbook. A book here called When Church Conflict Happens, another one called Antagonists in the Church, this one called When Shepherds Weep, covering some of the trauma pastors go through, The Wounded Minister, The Wounded Pastor, and then this one, a classic, 1986, by Brooks Faulkner, called Forced Termination. And so it's a phenomena in the church, and it's really sort of a silent phenomenon, something that people really don't talk about, and churches don't really address. So in my writing, one of the things I did in the project leading up to the workbook was I did some research, and I kind of put some thoughts out there about churches that do this, and the fact that the New Testament doesn't really give permission for churches to dismiss their pastor for no reason. And so I mentioned two reasons why. And you see this more and more. If you're watching the news, Donna, you're seeing more and more instances of pastors who are guilty of sexual sin, sexual abuse, affairs outside their marriage, even grooming and sexually assaulting minors. So the New Testament says, don't receive an accusation against an elder except for the presence of 2 or 3 witnesses. It says that those who continue to sin rebuke in the presence of all, so that the rest will be fearful of sinning. So if a pastor is guilty of sin, of blatant moral sin, then he is in a position to be terminated, and that's fair and should happen. In some cases, he can be restored. And then a second reason that a pastor can be terminated is because of bad doctrine. And so another verse that I used was from Paul's writing to Timothy as well. It says, hold fast the word of faithful word, which is in accordance with the teaching, so that he will be able to exhort in sound doctrine and to refute those who contradict. And so there are, according to Paul, empty talkers, deceivers that get into the church. But those are really the only 2 instances of the Bible that I can find where pastors should be justifiably terminated. And what I've recognized over years, and I've seen it just not in my life, but other guys' lives who are unjustifiably terminated. Someone doesn't like the personality, they don't like the direction the church is going. Just a multitude of really made up reasons. And then, as Kenneth Houck talks about in the book I reference, antagonists in the church, there are some people who just thrive and live for creating trouble.
Yes, they do. Drama.
The drama. Yes. I mean, I don't understand that. You see that in every realm of life, including in the church. You see it, now in politics. I'm ready for the election cycles to be over. I'm really not addressing politics much in my life right now. I have my political stances, but right now I'm just going to be silent. I think that's the best option because I don't have the energy or the time right now to get into Facebook arguments over all the political stuff. But I'm pouring my life right now into trying to minister to pastors. So let me just mention, and we may have to have a break in a minute. Just let me know when I need to stop talking.
4 minutes before the break.
Okay, so Kathi and I really want people to contact us if they need help. So if you're a pastor, of a pastor who has been through one of these, forced resignations or terminations that are unjustifiable, you can reach us at home2heartministry.com. You can comment on that page. There is an email. You can email me personally at bholcomb, that's BHOLCOMB 78 at gmail.com. And I'll just give my phone number. I don't mind a text message. I get enough spam calls anyway, so I'm open to something else coming in. But I can be reached at 256-460-8615. And Kathi and I will be glad to counsel with pastors to try to help them as they just seek to grasp what has happened and how do you work your way through that and back into fruitful ministry, because that's a possibility. But these times have shipwrecked a lot of guys, and they don't know where to turn. So my resource addresses that. Maybe we can talk about that after the break.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. We still got about 3 minutes before we go into the break, but I wanted to mention this. I'm old enough to have seen good men get lost in the ministry. What I mean by that is they come in, sometimes they come straight out of seminary and they are just gangbusters. They're ready to go at it. But then somebody tries to put them down a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll give you an instance. There's one guy in a church who was in Alabama, and the guy was a good guy. I mean, he's just a really good guy. So a woman in the church made a play for him, and he rejected her. And it offended her. So she started with her garbage, and getting to everybody that would listen to her. And I'm going to tell you what, the guy actually he had a farm. So he went out in the farm and actually shot himself. He killed himself. He just couldn't live with it anymore. And I never thought that man was guilty of that. I just never did. But this woman kept going. And it's like almost every single church, she just went from church to church. She would start something like that, and I don't know. That's not of God. But my question is to the people who listen to that nonsense. I mean, if something is really happening, and like you said earlier, the Bible completely says this, you go to that person one-on-one.
Yes.
Now, if it's of the opposite sex, you need to carry your spouse with you or a friend, because that can explode into oblivion too. But go one-on-one with that person. And if that doesn't do it, carry another person with you. And then if that doesn't do it, just carry it before the church, because sometimes we let things go, I think, and it starts festering up. And the older it gets, the worse it's going to be. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and Donna, everything you've mentioned, I've seen it happen in real time, in real life, in ministry. Every one of those. I have a friend who's a pastor who grew up as a pastor's kid. And his dad struggled with his health, with multiple sclerosis, moving around, attacks from people in the church. But ultimately, and this was a real twist I didn't see coming when I heard his testimony, his dad was found out to be in an affair, and he killed himself because he could not deal with the guilt and shame. So there is a fine edge for pastors to walk. You can get yourself in trouble, or you can be accused. I've been accused of being inappropriate toward women, and it was totally made up. And I was vindicated, but it's the people wanting revenge over whatever reason. It happens. Mine happened in the corporate world when I was an asset protection manager at Walmart, and a woman got found out for her husband was stealing from the company, and she was strung out on medication and passed out in the cash office. And so I had to address those things. And so her option then was, I'm going to accuse him of touching another woman inappropriately. But I have seen all of those things happen in the church, and churches have not learned how to deal with conflict.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One more before we go into a break. My grandmother was going to a church, and my grandmother would not listen to gossip. She just wouldn't listen to it. Well, the word started going, the naysayers and all this kind of stuff. And every time they would call her, anyone from the church would call her or try to talk with her inside the church, she would just walk off. She'd say, I'm not listening to that. And I think that's how we need, unless it's proved, something needs to be done about it. But if it's just someone who's just mad and just wants to start a ruckus, well, then don't listen to it. All it does is starts trouble. Yes. So let's go ahead and cut into a commercial break. And we'll be right back in just a few minutes. So we need to watch what we say, especially around kids, because you can cause a child to not want to go to church anymore. So, folks, we got to watch it. Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. Finding the right home isn't just about bedrooms and square footage. It's about comfort, security, and the feeling you get the moment you walk through the door. That's why so many families across Greenwood and the Lakelands area trust Jenny Ferguson with Keller Williams. And I'll tell you from personal experience, Jenny was my realtor, and she truly cares about her clients. Jenny takes the time to listen, to understand what matters most, and to guide you every step of the way, whether you're buying your first home, upgrading, or ready to sell. Because this isn't just a transaction, it's your life. With local knowledge, personal care, and a commitment to getting it right, Jenny Ferguson makes the process simple and even enjoyable. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, now's the time to make your move. Call Jenny Ferguson with Keller Williams in Greenwood today and take the next step toward a place you'll truly love coming home to. Shine your style at Kiss My Glass right here in the Anderson Mall. There's a place where style meets sparkle. At Kiss My Glass, every piece is handcrafted, custom designed, and made to shine just like you. Owner Beth Gibson brings creativity to life with stunning custom tumblers, gifts, and one-of-a-kind pieces you won't find anywhere else. Look for the perfect gift or something uniquely you, from bold and glamorous to simple and elegant. There's something for every style, so stop by, get inspired, and leave with something unforgettable. Kiss My Glass inside the Anderson Mall, Anderson, South Carolina, where your sparkle begins. Be sure to check out Kiss My Glass on Facebook for updates and specials and gift ideas. Good afternoon, Sunshine. Medical Minute brought to you by Dr. Chuck with Lakelands Chiropractic, where an ounce of prevention is worth what? A pound of cure. So what is the Beamer? Okay, now the Beamer uses very gentle pulse to electromagnetic signals. This will stimulate healthy muscles and it supports the temporary blood flow. Now let's talk Beamer and circulation support. Now the Beamer gently supports natural circulation in healthy muscles. Now that's what I call natural health. Thank you so much for watching your Medical Minute, brought to you by Dr. Chuck. You know who he's with. He's with Lakelands Chiropractic, where an ounce of prevention is worth what? A pound of cure. I hope you have a super duper awesome rest of the afternoon. You take care. Good afternoon, everybody. We are back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Continue sending email. I love them. Donna@donnasedge.com. Donna@donnasedge.com. I've got Pastor Barry Holcomb with me right now. And Barry, it's so good to see you. And I just wanted to say something about Kathy. Kathy, to me, is the model pastor's wife. And I don't say that to everybody either. So you tell her I said that, okay?
I will. And, I have to agree with you. If people only knew the lives that she pours her heart into outside the doors of the church, women, young girls, she is a disciple maker, a grace giver, and indeed, probably the better part of my ministry. I don't think the church, when I get ready to go, will be sad to see me go, but they'll be sad to see her go.
I'll be sad to see you go too.
I'll tell her what you said.
People watch The Minister's Wife. So when I was a kid growing up, there was a church we went to. I was about 6 years old, and even I took notice to this. The pastor's wife would not stay inside the church, and you could see she was made to come to church. And so she sat out in the car smoking her cigarettes while the church service was going on. Well, she looked like the bad guy. I mean, she really did. Well, later on, it was found it was actually him. And she was just disgusted, and just didn't want to sit under his ministry. And that happens too. So sometimes we jump to conclusions about something that's nowhere near the truth. And, the right kind of research has to be done.
I have seen that situation too. I had a very good friend. He is with the Lord now. His name was Don Graham. And Don eventually had a very wonderful itinerant revivalist ministry. But his wife knew what a fake he was for years. And eventually she stopped going to church where they were serving and went to another church and just sort of forced the issue for him to have to deal with it. And he even told the church that she was having problems with her health, but God did a great work in his life. I mean, Don's testimony was absolutely magnificent of what God did to restore him. And I think that's the key. Your wife has to be involved in the ministry. God's done a work to restore both of us, Donna, from what happened to us. And I think that's why Kathi is so skilled. And I use that word on purpose. She is a skilled pastor's wife, and just does the things that are called for.
Well, I was talking with another person a few days ago, and this was about cults in churches. And sometimes that happens. And I know another church, it was a church, it's like I'm picking on Alabama today, but this is where I grew up. So I remember all these things very well. So there was a guy and his wife who were pastor of a church, and she was pastor too. So them were pastor of the church.
Co-pastors.
Co-pastors. And they meant that people needed to call them mother and father. They even went as far as having people say, you don't send Mother's Day cards and Father's Day cards to your real parents. You send them to us.
Wow.
Well, it broke up a marriage. So there was a lady who went to that church, went to school with Phil. And so the husband just quit going to church. He said, I'm not going to that nonsense. That's crazy. But she got into it. It was like a cult type thing. And it broke their marriage up. And prior to her going to that church, they had such a strong marriage.
Churches, they're phenomenally difficult sometimes. And I think sometimes we give them a bad rap. I mean, I want to just say that I don't want your listeners to think that I have a mad on at the church. I mean, I tend to talk about a lot of
with me.
Church. I mean, listen, the church is the bride of Jesus, and he loves the church. And all the churches, it really is not, the church in heaven is not going to come under some denominational banner. There's not going to be a sign out in front that says Baptist, Independent, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Methodist. That's not going to exist. We're going to exist as the redeemed of the ages who Jesus died for. And so that's what the church is. And I don't want people to have this thought that I'm down on the church. I might have a reason to be down on the church because the church treated me poorly. But think of how Jesus was treated by those he died for, those that he loved and bled and died for. And so the church is so vital, and I think more and more today, vital in this country. We're not called as Christians to have this dominion theology, and dominion theology says that Christians should rule and dominate over all the affairs of government and society. We don't want to dominate, but we want to be involved. And I just advocate for church members, run for office, get on a school board, be an alderman or a board member of your city council. We have a member of our church who is the mayor of our town, and he has great influence and does so many good things. So the church is the instrument of the Lord Jesus on earth today to represent him. If you want to put it in terms, and I'm not sure I always like these terms, but being the hands and feet of Christ, we are his representatives here. So I want your viewers to know that I love the church. I've devoted my life in serving the church and preaching the gospel of Jesus to the church. And, she has her flaws. And one of those flaws has been, not knowing sometimes how to act and how to treat pastors. So that's.
Let me ask you another question. And this is really important. This is for us folks out in the congregation. How can we support a pastor more when we see there might be a problem somewhere, whether someone instigated or whatever? How can we give them our full support? What are some ways?
Well, I think first of all, and that's a great question, because one of the things you see when pastors are treated poorly is there are tons of people in the church who still support the pastor and don't want to see what's happening, but they keep their mouth shut. So I would just say in answer to that, speak up. Do not let a small fraction of the church create havoc over and over again. They are the ones who need to be called out. So the wonderful, good, godly people who know how to behave, according to Paul, who know how to conduct themselves in the church of the Lord Jesus Christ. They need to speak up. Let me just put it in gentle terms, but this is the truth. They need to grow a backbone, and they need to stop letting the naysayers dominate the church. So in love, they need to go to those. You know, we mentioned going to someone. Matthew 18, go and speak to them. Do not allow people to cause dissension in the church over nothing. And most of the times when pastors are dismissed, it's all about personal issues, personality. They'll hang it on the church is not growing, or the church has lost members, or the budget is struggling. And none of those are the direct responsibility of the pastor. They're responsibilities of the church. And the pastor's responsibility is to feed the flock and care for the sheep, to provide pastoral care. And you know, not every pastor is a great administrator. I'm not the best administrator, but I'm a single staff pastor, so I have to do things. But I would say if you're a church member and you're seeing these things go on, step in, speak up, be counted, let your voice be heard, and don't let it happen.
Well, the point is usually when something starts as a problem for the pastor of the church, it's usually one or two people.
Yes.
It looks as if
that grows usually into a larger group, because the antagonist will stir the pot and he will go around and gain supporters. So the man who was the chief antagonist when I was terminated, or forced to resign, if you want to call it that, he said, I've got a list of 100 names of people who have things against you. And I said, well, let me see the list. No, I can't let you see the list. Well, then that morphed into, it was 100 things. It wasn't 100 people's names. It was 100 things. I mean, literally, he used that number. And I said, well, then start naming them. And he couldn't name them because it was non-existent. But what he did is he went around to other deacons and rallied support for his view of me. When in truth, I had a very dysfunctional staff. They were in conflict with one another. Two men of God, two pastors, two associate pastors in the church were in conflict that they would not resolve. And it just created this environment of defeat. And I did everything I could. I involved the personnel committee. I insisted that we go to an outside counselor to try to work through the problems. And one deacon said, all of the problems are your fault because you're the new kid on the block.
Well, how can a pastor go in? We've got about a minute and a half left in this segment, but how can a new pastor go in and have the proper discernment to know the people, not to necessarily stay away from, but to not promote? You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, that's another fine line to walk. You know, personally, if I were going to another church to pastor, I would do my homework and know what they're about, and I would know their track record. And I probably would leave a church like that alone and look for a church who has had a history of harmony and not a history of dissension. And you can probably find those things out very easily. But what I've learned is sometimes pastors who will call me for a reference about a church, they won't listen to that. They think back to the seminary, out of seminary, they've got the answers. It won't happen to them. They're unique. Well, brother, you're not. And so I would just be careful and know what I'm getting into.
Absolutely. Okay. How can folks find more information about you and about what you do with your writings?
HomeToHeartMinistry.com. I'm going to release the workbook to any association who wants it, probably in June. I mentioned last time I will have the copyright issues worked out sometime in late May. And you know, I hate to say I've got to copyright this, but it's, you know, that's just a necessity. When I've worked so hard and spent months and months on a product, I'm going to copyright and protect it. But I'll be glad for people to get it. The contact information that I mentioned, they can reach me at that later on, and be happy to talk to any pastor or any church member out there. I don't have all the answers, but I'm seasoned enough to know some of the ins and outs. And Kathi and I'll be glad to minister to anyone who needs our help.
Absolutely. Barry, thank you again for being with us. Sure did miss Kathi also, but thank you guys so much for everything that you do. And thank you guys so much for watching. We definitely appreciate it. Continue sending email, Donna at donnasedge.com. Hope you have a super awesome rest of the day.
Good to see you, Donna.
You too.